When we first bought our boat, a friend of ours said, don't, whatever you do, put davits on your boat because it will ruin Esper's beautiful lines. But of course, after a number of years of living on the boat, you realise that function has to take over form, unfortunately. And you know, of course, proof of that is our wonderful Dodger, which isn't the prettiest thing in the world, but when it rains, it provides complete protection for us, which means we can stay in the cockpit. The same can be said for davits. So I was just taking the dinghy down and I thought, well, maybe I should just very quickly show you why we got davits and why they're so good. Of course, the main reason is to hang the dinghy. Because we're a ketch rig, we've got so much rigging on the boat, we just don't have the space to put our dinghy up at the front, which a lot of people do, of course, but even down on the back here. I think when we come to do our next big ocean passage, we'll probably take the dinghy off the back and put it down on the back deck here. But at the moment, for the sake of convenience, it's just great having this dinghy hanging off the back. And of course the other reason is to put a great big solar panel on top of that as well. So our dinghy, the davits, is constructed in such a way that we're able to hoist the dinghy up quite high. It would be nice if we went a little bit higher, but it's high enough for most purposes. And of course to secure it, and that's really what I wanted to show you, is how we actually secure the dinghy so that it doesn't move, because it's all very well raising the dinghy up, but you need to be able to keep it from moving sideways, especially actually of all things in rolly anchorages, which is where you're going to get most of the rubbing. We don't ever tow our dinghy, it's just something we don't ever do, we avoid doing that, so it is nice to have a quick way of hauling up the dinghy. Let me show you. So starting at the hoisting mechanism, you can see that we have triple blocks here. So that makes it, I guess it's geared 6-way. I tell a lie, they're not triple, are they? They are double. I think we tried triple and it was just too much. So anyway, yes, they're double blocks, so they're geared 4 ways, I suppose. And that runs through the top, up there, down here, through a little block here, and down onto a cleat, which has been nicely engineered there. Now the blocks themselves are actually stainless. We did have nylon, but we found they wore away. We couldn't get decent replacements, so these are actually stainless, which does mean over time it will wear this down, but it's not so bad, and it just means that they're pretty hardy. You also notice this other cleat here. This is the important one. This is where we strap 2 lines running horizontally either side, and this is what stops the dinghy from moving this way. So we use this is Dynema. It's quite cheap Dynema, this. We got a whole big reel of it quite cheap, but anyway, it doesn't stretch, that's the important thing. So I normally round turn 2/2 hitch this off, but one runs from the front of the dinghy to the back here, and another line from the back of the dinghy to the front there. So on the whole, this works 90% of the time. But what I do also like to do when we're doing longer passages is actually take the painter, which of course is strapped underneath the dinghy, and I'll take this forward and around down to this cleat here. That also helps pull the dinghy in towards the boat, and it keeps it upright. And then if I can be really bothered, we do actually have a line here. There's a Dynema line just there, and that I can take underneath the dinghy and strap it to the wheels that we've got on the back of the dinghy. And that keeps it absolutely secure. You'll also see we've got a couple of foam bumpers, very kindly given to us by a couple of cruisers. Thank you. And those help as sort of an extra buffer, I suppose. I mean, you can just use fenders, which we also have there just in case. So that's pretty much it. Now, the other thing that you may have noticed, let me get on the other side to get you a better view, is this. This here was designed in such a way that we could drop our solar panel. So the idea being was that I wanted to, if possible, tilt this, so drop the front of the solar panel down. So it's basically tilted at an angle. And this was really for very high winds, and also just in case I wanted to chase the sun, but to be honest, I never like doing that. So this tends to stay perfectly horizontal pretty much all the time. I don't really use those, but at least we do have that feature there if we need it. Oh, there is one other thing I forgot to mention, which I think is really important, and that is to have a safety line. So we have another Dyneema line here. So what we do is we hoist the dinghy up, and then this Dyneema line, which is completely independent from the block system, clips onto this V line here, which of course is attached to the dinghy itself. What this means is that after hoisting it up, we clip this up and then we drop the dinghy back down so that this Dyneema line is taking the weight and not the block system. This basically gives us backup, I suppose, if the block were to break, and that has happened in the past, then this line here will take the fall. Right, time to drop the dinghy because we're going to go off for a little motor around the island, which we've not actually done before. It's a beautiful day. Look at that. The sounds of the birds only. Supposed to be getting some southerly winds coming up from down there, but no sign of them yet. Let's get going. Well, this makes a nice change for me. I get to play around in the dinghy whilst Liz is driving us. Doesn't often happen. She's perfectly capable of doing it, aren't you?
Yes,
yes,
I
dear.
like doing it.
Yeah.
I like doing the looking.
She likes doing the looking. Yeah, so this is a first for us. We've not been round the island before. As you can see behind me, it is very beautiful. To the east we have the panorama of the mountains of Borneo Island itself, but this island is surrounded by reef. I'm not entirely sure if it's coral or not. There's quite a bit of fish activity, but really what we're doing is scoping out a spot to potentially have a barbecue, and there are plenty of places, including just behind me. Should we go down there, Liz? Go and have a look. Well, we've come ashore, but Liz has gone straight in the water because apparently there are sandflies here. I think she's been a bit paranoid. I don't think it's that bad. A couple of fishermen behind us, tied up and just having their lunch under the shade of a tree, because of course typically it is midday. But what a beautiful little spot, eh? Look, there's Liz just relaxing in the water there. Marvellous. Marvellous.
We're going ashore to have a look to see what's going on, maybe try and find somewhere we can have a barbecue. It's lovely, isn't it? I just thought I saw something in the water.
Hello. Well, I'm not sure if you remember, but we have actually been ashore here before last year, early after the first lockdown. So it was closed, as it is now, of course. I don't want to harp on about it. I've mentioned it so many times now in our videos, but it is sad to see how this is just going to wreck and ruin. I mean, you take, for example, these sombreros here, just falling apart. When we came here last year, shortly after lockdown, they were still in good nick. And you can see that everything has just been left. They've tidied the beach up a little. We do know there are people ashore. I guess it's probably just the caretaker and about 8 dogs, who of course all came to say hello to us. The sooner they open this up, the better, because this is one of the best spots on this coast, I think. It's up there with Robbie's secret place on Secret Beach, up towards Kudat. But if you remember, we got taken round some little chalets, which are just over there. And in front of the chalets, they have this sort of little lagoon, which fills up when the tide comes in.